Hey everybody, how's it going? Sorry. Um, well, anyway, we are for another lecture, and hope you all caught the one on Friday. Yeah, these come up pretty quickly. But we're actually like pretty close to the end here. How about that? Moving fast. It's actually beginning of our fourth week. I'm recording this over the weekend, so this will be posted on Monday. Anyway, I actually have my well, two last new things to introduce to you, and that is our next assignment. So our next to last assignment is a feature assignment, okay? And that's where you basically get to kind of, as I say, flex your creative muscles a little bit more than usual, and actually um, get to basically, go maybe beyond a little bit of the boundaries that journalism writing like sets for us, and go beyond, and then maybe you still pretty much have a simplistic story that actually is very much about, keeping things focused, accurate, and clear. But you're allowed to go on to do things like, instead of just being accurate, clear, and focused, but also um, you can also basically describe things that's around. You could be colorful. You could be just can't be opinionated. You still can't use adjectives that are like beautiful or something like that. But an adjective like blue, as blue sky, is fine. Um, a gray sky or something. But descriptive is actually something that you can add a little bit more to it. Okay. And also the way the story is structured pretty much the same way, but the big difference is at the top of the story, and I'm going to talk to you about what's an anecdotal lead. Okay. So let's just stay in touch for that part of it. But first, I have some things also. Other thing to introduce to you that's actually really important. Okay. Sharing the screen here. Okay. All right. So, let's just go to where we have to go. Okay. All right. So, now what you should know is these last two assignments count more. You might remember me talking about that in the very first lecture. Okay. Because again, I grade on progress. I've seen progress all around. I've seen people getting A's. It's great. On B's and B pluses and that sort of thing. But I'm taking into consideration a lot of people again have entered this class. Have never done this kind of thing before. You're used to doing expository writing, that sort of thing. So now you have to do a craft of writing that's a bit different than what you've done before, where the mystery is revealed at the top. Essentially works as an upside down story. There's no conclusions, as I've described in many papers before. It just basically, probably the best way to end a story actually is to just end with a direct quote. The story just basically dwindles out. Your most important reveal is at the beginning. Okay. All right. So yes, this is actually the fifth assignment. Um, and also please don't forget that your megalomania assignment is due on Monday as well. And then the rewrite will be posted for that. Okay. So you can see right here, it's actually in dark because I have not posted it yet. I'll be posting on Monday. And again, I'm recording this over the weekend. Okay, so that's due on Monday, and then there'll be a rewrite for that. I'm sorry, that's the assignment right here. A rewrite for that will be due June 27th. Okay. All right. So please remember that. And then you have your feature assignment. Okay. That'll be due a week from today, meaning a week from Monday, June 24th. Okay. Actually, it's interesting. Now I actually staggered these dates a little bit. So I'm sorry, it's not actually a week from today. This is actually I'm actually giving you guys a little bit more time to do this rewrite so you can get the feature assignment done. Okay. So, anyway, the feature assignment is going to be due a week from today, the 24th. Sorry, I forgot about that. And then on that following a week from Thursday, you're gonna have 10 days to rewrite this megalomania assignment. Okay. Yes. See, 17th to the 27th. Okay. So that way I don't want you like having both on the same day, both due on the same day. Okay. So But please remember to actually, with this, the first Megalomania assignment is to actually, you should really contact me by now. Please let me know what you think maybe the lead is. You definitely should have maybe contacted Bill by now. He's going to play the company spokesperson. I've gone over that in a couple of videotapes already. Okay. And then we have something that's due on Monday, a week from today, which is another reason why I've staggered the deadlines here with the Megalomania rewrite coming in on Thursday. Is you have a proposal that's due. It's not graded, but it's mandatory that you actually submit this, okay? And if you don't familiar to submit this proposal on time, it is a full grade deduction on what is the major assignment, okay? This is the very last assignment, okay? So before I get into the feature writing, the new stuff about the feature writing, you should know that that's your again, your second to last assignment is your feature assignment. Your last assignment is a major assignment, okay? That's going to be due, as it says down here, July 5th. I know, day after July 4th. I didn't make it July 4th, but it's July 5th. So maybe get it done July 3rd. And what I do is I give you some time here to actually like think of the idea and produce the idea, okay? More than a week, basically, okay? I give you a week to actually come up with the idea, okay? So for this initial preparatory assignment, you'll write a description of a proposed topic for a major assignment. Now, it's really a bit of a misnomer saying major assignment. Basically, I mean, I say major because I'm actually really required to provide a major assignment, which is what they call it, but it's supposed to be something more extensive than what you've been doing before, okay? No, I'm not talking about a research paper or anything like that. You're still writing a news story, okay? And you still should pick perhaps some sort of simplistic topic, okay? That's something that you can get done, okay, within the time frame, which, once this gets approved by July 24th, you'll have from June 24th, you'll have from June 24th until July 5th to get it done. You'll have almost 2 weeks to get it done, okay? But you still should pick something that's not like major investigative, that sort of thing. I'm going to reject it, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm doing this for you, okay? So basically, all I'm asking you to do is to write a story that's like, kind of like the stories we've already been doing, but twice as long, okay? This story will be and usually there it is, 800 to 1100 words. Again, I know if you have a robust 750, that's better than a fat, 1100, okay? Loaded with like filler, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to write a description on a Microsoft Word doc. It doesn't have to be that long. It could be maybe a sentence or two, okay? Basically on anything that that is a topic that you feel that people would care about, and I'm really leaving it very much open that way, okay? Um, okay, so actually, let's look at this one right here. To give you an example, I give you a couple examples of what people have done. Um, she did a really long proposal here. It doesn't have to be this, okay? How do Rutgers students feel about the housing selection process? Is housing for students sometimes difficult to find, okay? What's good about this is why this is the major assignment and twice as long as opposed to, let's say, the tuition assignment. It's best to really kind of pick, I think, reaction assignments to kind of get people's, because there's no major big happenings unless there's a big tuition increase this month. There's no major big happenings happening on campus right now, okay? Because it's summertime, that sort of thing. So what you want to do is you want to like pick something that might get like more reaction than the typical issue on campus, like a tuition increase, okay? You want to pick out something that may have more than like a pro and a con to it, okay? And might have like multiple perspectives. Something like housing, I mean, how do you rate that like just as good or bad? It's just not that. There's nuance there. There's shades of gray. So this kind of topic, even though still a student reaction story, is something that is better for 800 words, 1100 words than a tuition increase, which is pretty much just typically a slam dunk. Almost nobody likes it. So, it's pretty easy to write and that sort of thing. This is a little more complicated, okay? This is about, things they find in the house, the housing selection process, what they get out of it. I mean, you can look at so many different slices of this story, okay? It doesn't have to be Rutgers related because I know you guys are at home basically, or maybe some of you are at the dorms. I don't know, but to give you an example, I've had people like work for I'm sorry, work from China, actually be students from China. And what they did was this particular case, they picked an air crash that happened. And what they did, again, another reaction story. People in China and a number of international students take online courses in recent years, but they got people in China basically react to how they were reacting to this. Now, again, this is like a little bit more complicated than like just reacting to a tuition increase. I mean, obviously everybody's going to feel sad and horrified by it, but they're going to have like more complicated feelings about it. Like, why did it happen? Do they know anybody who's been involved in this crash? How is it like shaking the mood of people around them? Has there been any kind of investigation? Do you feel like that's being handled appropriately? That sort of thing. There's lots more questions to these types of stories I'm looking for. But like I said, they still typically have like some sort of simplistic topic. Okay. So once your topic is approved, again, this is due a week from today, June 24th, the same day as the feature assignment. You submit it through this you submit the idea of this cap, I should say before it gets approved, you submit it to this Canvas entry, and then I prove it. I let you know in an email. Again, failure to submit this on time gets a full grade deduction on the major assignment. Okay. There's no rewrite to this. Okay. Not mandatory, but this is actually kind of more project oriented. I say don't take that the wrong way though. It's not a research paper, okay? But what you want to do is you want to get a story again that's a little more extensive. Again, try to keep it simplistic, that sort of thing. But this is how stories that require like more time to do. What they typically do is a lot of the editing is done up front. The editor works with the reporter up front, usually to try to help shape the story, make sure all the questions are asked, that sort of thing. It's not like a deadline story. There is a deadline typically, but typically like a deadline story, you're given it that day, you're supposed to get it done within an hour or two, and then an editor edits and that sort of thing. This is something that where you're looking down the road, and maybe it's something that's gonna like be a more extensive story, like a feature story, typically that actually will engage the reader from top to bottom. Like I said, a longer story, so it's going to require more effort and input, and you're going to need somebody typically to like. And a lot of times they double team. They have like maybe two reporters on this type of assignment, and you're going to need somebody, an additional person there to help shape it. So what this is going to be like almost like a rewrite in reverse. What you should do is actually submit instead of rewrites, which there won't be on this assignment. You should submit a draft to me in an email. That's all, and then I'll provide guidance to you. You can do this with any assignment actually if you want, but you submit a draft to me ahead of time. Okay, let me know what you think. Like, how do you feel about it? That sort of thing, whatever. Um, all right. And then like I give you some guidance. You really, again, not required, but again, like people ask me, like, how do you do class participation in online class? Here's another example right here. Okay. Also, submitting the proposal itself is a class participation exercise. So keep that in mind too. Okay. So there's plenty of opportunities for class participation in an online class, right? And here's one of them, basically submitting your rough draft to me ahead of time before July 5th. Try to avoid July 4th, okay? I mean, I do have things to do, okay? So, all right. So let's get that in a week. Major assignment. What does this all mean again? If you go back to the modules, okay? Um, I had a rubric and grading section. Okay, and I talked about this again early on, but I say I typically have 5 or 6 assignments. Well, I had 6, which is what I typically have. And again, you can see here that I put more weight on the last ones because the idea is that, I'm grading on progress here. Okay. I want, by this point, people should be getting it, and they are. Most people are getting it. You guys are. Okay. And so I give you credit for that. Basically, this is their feature. So this is the Megalomania assignment right here. It's 10% of your grade, 10% of your writing grade, which is 70% of your overall grade. Okay. So this counts once, in other words, it counts once, counts once, counts once. And then it's your feature assignment, counts twice as much as one of these individual ones. So that's 20% of your rating grade. Okay, if you can follow me on that one. Okay. And the major assignment, which we do July 5th, we would be 40% of your writing grade. That's 4 times as much as one of these individual ones, the first 4. Okay. So this is how your 70% of your total grade is made up. Okay. So, listening to this particular lecture, that sort of thing. Okay. All right. So, all right. And obviously keep in mind what the grading system is. Okay. So let's go back to the assignments. Okay. I also have chapters 8 and 12, which I'll go over in the next lecture, but chapters 8 and 12 are the feature story readings. They're the last readings of the semester. Okay. But what's interesting about it is that I feel as though that, the book doesn't do a great job in basically 13th edition here, doesn't do a great job in basically describing what a feature story is. So what I do is I include in my in my descriptions of what is needed to be done on a feature assignment, I put that on Canvas. I put copies of old texts, and that's something. Let me show you where they are. Well, actually, first let me just show you the assignment. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that I got everything. Oh, I'm going to be putting up a discussion point as well. Actually, let's do that right now. Okay. Um, okay, so we have, and by the way, discussion point, another example. Good. We got 15 people. Very good. That's for the tuition assignment. Don't forget that. And actually, that rewrite was due. That rewrite is actually, that's another thing that's actually due, and I'm sorry I forgot. That's due on June 19th. Okay. So please don't forget that. So we have again, we have the tuition reaction story due on June 19th. On June sorry, I'm just losing track here. June 20 boy, I'm just losing track myself. Let me go back. I'm sorry. So that's actually already been posted. I'll have this all written out too. When I release this lecture, that's due on June 19th. So first is actually Megalomania is due on Monday, June 17th. I know a lot going on, but we have a very short amount of time here to get things done. Okay. And then June 19th, which is Wednesday, is when the rewrite to the 6% tuition reaction is due. And then we go to the 24th, which is when the major assignment proposal and the feature assignment are due. Okay. And then you'll be getting back the Megalomania stories by Monday or Tuesday, or whatever. And you'll have until the 27th to rewrite that. Okay. And then of course your major assignments due July 5th. Okay. So yeah, a lot to remember. Again, a short amount of time. I do one assignment less than fewer than I do in my my spring and winter classes, so maybe take that to heart. All right. So let's go talk about the feature assignment. Okay. So again, this is the opportunity where you get like to flex your creative muscles. And it's interesting because again, journalism has like some rigid standards to the way it is and everything, but in this, like I said, in this particular case, this kind of story gives you more opportunity to actually like, kind of go to places that you're not normally allowed. I say wouldn't normally go to. You would maybe like describe like, this is where anecdotes become very important, where we basically describe somebody's personal experience and maybe it's something about like housing or something like that and how they're trying to react to housing, maybe how they're living in the area. And things like description of things become much more important. Like if it's like if it's a story about somebody reacting to housing or something like that and how bad the housing, let's say the off-campus housing is, you could say like the toilet has like never works in so and so's house. He jiggles the handle and everything, and there's just nothing happens. There's no sound or anything. So you get into that kind of like description of the sound, what's in front of him, and that sort of thing that you wouldn't normally like get into in a straight news story. Okay. Um, those types of things become much more important, okay? So we're doing a 500 800 word story. The instructions for which are actually I put on a separate, been doing this for a long time, but I put this actually on a separate, um, this is what you'll get when you call it up. I put this on a separate Microsoft Word doc. So for this assignment, you'll write a 500 800 word story that will require you to flex your creative muscles. You're required to use an anecdotal lead, which I'll talk about in a bit, with a nut graph. These leads describe action in a narrative form. Okay. So that's the big difference, by the way, is that how the lead is constructed, because it's not typically your one sentence lead. I know I've been like going on one sentence lead, and we just got done with which is just how weird the summer classes can be, because usually there's a span of like 4 or 5 weeks between the worksheet assignment and the feature assignment. But yeah, this is actually where you would actually write a 3 or 4 or 5 sentence lead. Okay. Why is it done here? Why are there multiple sentence leads here and not in typical stories? Because it's actually like a slightly different audience that reads these stories. Okay. These are stories that are written to be read. Let me just say that again. These are stories that are written to be read. This is actually again, most stories are written with the idea in mind that people will be reading them and just reading the first paragraph and they're done and they're gone. I mean, it just basically caters to that instinct. Okay. But that I like to say those are the daily news stories, even though everything goes by the minute now with the digital internet and everything else. But that's for that's for the commuters reading off their phone, daily news stories, and they're trying to jam into the train. They're trying to get like the Twitter, sorry, X, kind of information very quickly. They get it like a breaking news alert on their phone. You know, yeah, there's a big one right there. Here are the seven under the radar. I'm a baseball fan. All-star candidates for each league. That's where you're trying to get like maybe there's that kind of one sentence information, that sort of thing. That's all you need. But then there's also the person on the weekend, and I know this is almost kind of like a fallacy, but and a dream and a fantasy. But the idea is that on the weekends, people like to read longer. Um, they have a little more time, and I like to say that's the person going into the city to like shop or whatever, and I live in Metuchen. I have a train station. This is my metaphor, right? And maybe they have a little more time to read something. They have the phone in front of them and they'll actually like scan through it and they'll actually like read the whole story because they're engaged. And because of the way you introduce the story in a different way, it's a more engaging way to introduce the story. Okay. And this is how it's done basically. Make notes of the details. You'll see, what are people wearing? Is it hot outside? Is it raining a lot? Are people stepping in puddles? you know, we've had a combination of like hot weather and raining wet weather lately. We've had actually some cool days too, which has been kind of odd. Okay. Um, so what you have is typically something like this. Okay. Instead of having that one sentence lead where you would say, if you can follow me right here, Rutgers students say they're getting used to the hot weather and it's hard. Or I should say the changing, because it is kind of going back and forth. The changing weather is hard. Okay, so you would like the prior stories, you'd be writing a sentence to be like that, because it has been kind of like a herky jerky back and forth thing. Those of you who are maybe like enjoying the beach right now, that you have a situation right now where it's like hot enough to go, but then the water's too cold. So we're kind of that's how we deal with in New Jersey. We deal with this kind of almost like two-sided, two-faced kind of thing, where it's like you just don't know which direction things are gonna go in. You expect to like have like a nice hot weather day, but then you go down to the freaking water and it's like I used to grow up at the Jersey Shore and it's just like freezes your ass off. Okay. So instead you would have something maybe like a little more engaging. What you do is you kind of introduce the readers more slowly. Okay. Oops. Um, all right. So on Monday we'll alter. So look at this. So basically your first sentence, what you have is these are called teases. Okay. And it's all part of the anecdotal lead. Okay, this whole thing's an anecdotal lead, although I don't have a nut graph here, but I'll show you the nut graph. Okay, so this is kind of like they do on TV news too, where they like Channel 2 News in New York likes to talk about restaurants where people get sick. They'll say like, "What you're about to hear might kill you" or something. Okay, it's kind of like this vague tease, and that is actually intended to be vague. But the idea is that it's not necessarily vague. That's a negative word to use here. It's more of a cliffhanger that's being used here, and it's basically supposed to leave you wanting. Okay, to the next paragraph. So the idea here is to show some drama, show some horror, show some surprise, that sort of thing. Okay. Try to engage the reader with some interesting pieces of information that lead up to the big reveal. Okay. The idea is to kind of suck the reader into this interesting idea instead of just giving them this kind of straightforward thing here. Okay. All right. But you got to use information as dramatic and that sort of thing. Okay. Maybe like, or maybe something that's like a little bit of surprise, that sort of thing. You still should have substance in a story. You just don't write like bland teases like Walter Shrub didn't like the weather today. It was hot. I mean, basically, maybe show a little bit of description. Walter Shrub walked outside and like started sweating profusely and felt like he was going to faint. Try to show something that's a little more unique when you get into these teases and description, that sort of thing, how they affect them personally. This is what they call an anecdotally. It's an anecdote. How does this affect them individually and personally that it does in a way it doesn't affect other that doesn't that's maybe unique from other people. Okay. Several passengers stared at his feet, and then there. Now we go to another paragraph, and then glared at his face. We still don't know what's going on. We still don't know what the idea is, but we don't know. Is he going to murder somebody? Is he going to? He's supposed to again leave the reader wanting. Okay, and then we got the little bit of the surprise here. Why I'm protesting the heat? He says. I hope God sees this, or at least Mother Nature. Okay. So it's this kind of engaging, maybe even humorous kind of like way of entering the story. Okay. So instead of being one paragraph, it's like several, and it's an engaging, this kind of suspenseful. Then you come what they call the nut graph. The nut graph is almost what they call like a delayed lead, even though this is all the lead right here. But this is the graph where you kind of like sum up everything like you would normally like right here in your typical hard news lead. So you would say shrub is among a number, and that's actually a good way of kind of you transition into the nut graph. You take like this little narrative, this little anecdote you had, and transition into this because eventually there's a point where the people in these news stories, even though it's a feature story and it engages them, they want to like, okay, finally tell me what's going on here. Okay, they do get to a point where they're all like, please give me the big reveal. The big reveal doesn't happen at the end, but doesn't happen at the very beginning either. But it basically like you gotta like give them something to feed on eventually. Okay, among a number of Rutgers students who are upset that the summer season hasn't really begun yet, and they're having a hard time adjusting. Okay. Because we've had like yesterday I went out for a run and we had this weird rainstorm that happened where the rain was going sideways and everything. And I thought I was gonna have like a hot run, where I had to like was gonna sweat my what's off. And then like next thing I know, I was like, drenched. Okay. Um, all right. So that's basically so you can almost like start the story just here. Walter Shrub and other Rutgers students are upset with the summer season hasn't begun yet. And then what you do is then you kind of go back into the rhythm that I talked to you before, where you get into like transitions that kind of introduce a certain sub point that backs up the lead, and then you get into essentially an anecdote. Remember, like some of you are having a hard time with those still, but an anecdote basically like describes some sort of a personal experience, paraphrased. Okay, it's really better to like use your own words to describe action and that sort of thing. Okay. And people's personal circumstances. And then you maybe have a direct quote that's sharp and snazzy and that sort of thing. Go back to my previous lecture where I talk about that with the 6% tuition height reaction. Okay. All right. So then what you were supposed to do here is the interview. This is your assignment. Interview people about the weather and how spring is changing the summer and how it's impacting them. And write a 500, 800 word feature story on it. So maybe another way to look at it is also maybe they're not looking forward to summer too. Maybe they don't like the hot, muggy weather of New Jersey if they live here, because some of you may not be here. Okay. or Florida, whatever, and they're not looking forward to that, and they're having a hard time like keeping their air conditioners on, and if they don't have one or whatever. Talk to them about the weather and how they're adjusting. Describe the grass, the beach, the sky, the climate. Write a story about how people appreciate this time of year or don't appreciate. Do they like the sunny weather? One thing I always put a note in here, and actually I have it right here. Let's get rid of this. I put this actually in the assignment entry itself. Okay. Sometimes when I do these weather stories, which I do this as like not like a major assignment story. This is simple enough where I feel like doesn't have that many shades of gray to it. But one shade of gray I don't want to see is like a story on climate change. I've had people like kind of launch into this whole thing where they've turned all their sources into scientists. Okay. And let's just put it this way, okay? I don't really care how you feel about on this issue, but climate change is real. Global warming is real, okay? And that's just the way it is, okay? I mean, maybe they can make a passive remark about it or something like that, like, "Oh, the sun's got really beaten down. It must be that global warming." That's fine, but please don't have students basically commenting, "See, this is exactly why the global warming is happening," and blah blah. They should do something about it. I'm not looking for a paper about that. I'm looking for a reaction to the changing of the seasons. Okay, from spring to summer. Okay, all right. That's all I'm looking for. Okay. Um, I have an example that I put in here. Now, this is not a spring to summer story. It's more like a winter to spring story, but I feel like the same method applies. It's from a student by the name of Andrew M. Okay. So you can see like very simple tease at the beginning. Rutgers freshman Destiny Claudio struggles to adapt to wet and wild weather patterns that plague campus life. Okay. Kind of vague, not really quite there. Okay. But basically, like, oh, what's happening? Are there hurricanes there? What's going on? It kind of leaves you wanting a little bit. Says her daily commute to class is disrupted by frequent rainfall and that she often fails to arrive at her classes without getting soaked. Probably should be like 2 paragraphs here. Sometimes it's actually good to have a lead like this where you have like these kind of dramatic pauses. Um, and it's not something also relatable, somebody driving to school. That's relatable for a lot of students because a lot of students drive to school. You said the rapid temperature fluctuations rupture our sinuses. Ouch. It causes a slew of health problems. So it's kind of, again, we're up here, we're like adapt. What does that mean? Wet and wild. Okay. I mean, that can mean anything. We're finding actually out as a little surprise here that basically she has really serious health problems, ruptures her sinuses, that sort of thing. Whenever the temperatures spike, I know a sinus infection is my future. Then I'm down for the count and I'm miserable in my dorm. That's a good emotional quote with color. Okay. Now here's your nut graph. Claudio's concerns are echoed by others around campus who feel that the weather adds additional stress to their daily to their already stressful lives. Rutgers students are fuming over the cold and rainy season. Again, this is winter to spring, and want spring to come sooner, citing the health and logistical hurdles caused by the current weather patterns. So basically, you have how this story sums up in this nut graph right here. Basically, like Rutgers students are fuming. Um, and why are they fuming? Because of these reasons. And you sum up everything in this nut graph right here. Okay. All right. So how is that structure? And what is it like? Let's go here. Okay. So again, I've been talking about lead, transition, anecdote. You have a lead, you have a transition that kind of breaks down the lead into certain parts. You have an anecdote that basically kind of helps illuminate the first topic introduced by the transition. It's a personal experience, that sort of thing. It's good to come with maybe a direct quote. And then you kind of repeat, maybe you have like another anecdote that comes in, that's fine, it fits under this transition. And then you have like another transition that comes in, maybe an anecdote. So the difference here is in the lead, okay? The lead is broken down this way, okay? Instead of having your typical straight lead, you have a tease, maybe another tease, maybe a direct quote, and then a nut graph. Okay. This is all the lead right here. Okay. All right. Tease, one sentence tease, one sentence tease, one sentence tease. Again, the idea is to try to engage you into a story. If you engage a reader early on, you actually may get them interested enough to read the actual story. Okay. You know, there'll be like, maybe because there's suspense involved, drama involved, that sort of thing, okay? And readers like that, and advertisers love it, okay? Here's a New York Times feature story right here. I showed you a little bit of this last week. Because there's advertisements that go down to the bottom of the story, and if you're actually going to write a story that people are going to want to read from top to bottom, and typically they also call these like human interest stories, something relatable, that sort of thing. You have ads down here that people want to, might want to see, that sort of thing. I mean, sorry, that the advertisers want to see. They'll be happy because maybe they paid like less money to like, you know, put this advertisement there. Okay. But because it's an engaging story and that sort of thing, you're going to read it and they're going to see your ad. And that's actually what they call an impression. It's like they used to actually like make money on ads and everything by having people click on them. Well, a lot of people didn't like to click on them. So now they actually rate them based on impression, basically if you actually saw them or not. Okay. There's another one down here, MIT management, that sort of thing. Okay. So how do they have this one set up? Again, first paragraph doesn't tell you everything you need to know. It's supposed to kind of basically cliffhang you. It's supposed to kind of like spike your interest a little bit, leave you wanting. On the Monday of January 6th, 2021, that's the day of the insurrection, Christopher Blair's fake news empire was humming along. What does that mean? Who is Christopher Blair? What is this fake news empire? Where did he help the insurrection? What's happening here? Mr. Blair had been earning as much as $15,000 in some months by posting false stories to Facebook about Democrats and the election, reaching millions of people each month. But okay, so now we're finding out that he's the guy that basically kind of helped get this thing going, okay? After a mob of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol, his growing enterprise came to abrupt halt. Facebook seemed to recognize its own role in fomenting the insurrection and tweaked its algorithm to limit the spread of political content, fake or otherwise. Mr. Blair watched his engagement flatline. It just kind of crashed, although anything political crashed for just about 6 months. Today, though, Mr. Blair is fully recovered and then some. His false posts, which he insists are satire intended to mock conservatives, so he's gone in a different direction apparently. So he's going like, he went from like basically helping foment the insurrection to basically now mocking Republicans. Receiving more interactions on Facebook than ever, surging to 7.2 million interactions already this year, compared to 1 million in all of 2021. He's done it by pivoting away from politicians and toward culture war topics like Hollywood and social justice issues. I'm sorry, maybe I misread that. I meant to say that actually, like, so he basically like he's like, so what he does is actually he makes him, this is actually what Stephen Colbert used to do, is that he actually like Stephen Colbert used to play a conservative character who was outrageous and said outrageous things, and he did that for humorous purposes. This guy does the same thing. Okay, it's all intended to be satire. Okay, like right here he says like, when Robert De Niro appeared outside of Manhattan courthouse last month to criticize Donald Trump, for example, Mr. Blair dashed off a false post claiming that a conservative actor had called him horrible and ungodly. It received 20,000 shares. Many writers like him who publish falsehoods to fringe websites have also leaned into cultural war topics. So he's doing that in a way to make it seem so ridiculous to mock them. But right here is where the nut graph is, okay? Because it's all about him and his empire, okay? This basically this sums up everything that he does and how it's working and how it's working in his favor, okay? What we had initially, you can see it even threw me off. I thought this was going to be like something about some guy who was helping to support Trump. But actually, it's some guy who's actually like turned around his empire and made it into some sort of Mad Magazine kind of thing. Okay, who's basically, apparently made himself like into some sort of media mogul. Here he is. It runs a satirical Facebook from his home in Maine. Maine, there he is right there. So it's all about him and his empire. It's all summed up right here. And then what you have essentially transitions and anecdotes that breaks things down. You can see the not many direct quotes in here. After what happened on January 6th, there was some progress, and then almost immediately that progress was rolled back. I think we're actually more vulnerable to this today than we were in spring of 2021. Okay. He's an avowed liberal. He doesn't see his work as fake news. He has long defended himself. Blah blah blah. Okay. All right. So anyway, so that's, as you can see right there, this engaging top kind of leaving you wanting, and then finally it kind of lands you with a thud, basically like be a little bit surprised, the big reveal. And then like by that point you're supposed to be kind of like, and usually like I said, the human interest stories, they get into like what somebody's doing, how somebody's successful, how somebody's doing something that's like crazy, that sort of thing. It's supposed to kind of almost kind of like shock you even in a way, you know. Typically these are how, if I was to do the profile story over again, that's probably how I would ask you to do it, is just that way. Okay. All right. So anyway, this is what I do is I have, if you want to find like I actually have a video within the assignment entry itself, helps talk about that. And but I forgot, by the way, I meant to do it the discussion point on the weather. Okay. So let's like get that up right now. All right. I did this a little bit incorrectly last time, so let's make sure I got it right. How would you feel about weather? So again, put on your this is about class participation, put on your source caps, please. Is it too consistent? Is it too rainy? Is it too hot? Please provide anecdotes that personify your feelings. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna be posting this. I'll leave it open-ended. I meant to put in liking last time. Okay. And let's see what else here. Save and publish. Okay. There you go. Discussion point. All right. I'll pin this at the top. Okay. Okay. So now it's there, right under that one. This one I'll probably unpin after the rewrite is due. See, they'll have just this one. Okay, so please reply to that. That's class participation. Please do that. All right, so now I actually have like a lot of the reading material. Actually, if you check out again to the modules and you've been following them along, you'll see that I actually like talk a little bit about what we're doing each week. And under feature news, I actually have like some of the reading content, even though I've asked you to read chapters 8 and 12. Again, I feel like some of the reading content from the old books are actually better. So writing so I included that actually in the module under feature news. Okay. So writing feature stories different. I mean, here's one way to describe it. Differentiating feature stories from news stories is misleading. The two are actually have a great deal in common. The detail difference is emphasis. The styles are commonly referred to used for feature stories assume that the reader has more time to read. They still require a central theme. The writer must be able to summarize the point of the story, but the writing may require the reader go further to understand the point of the story. So basically, if you're doing again a story about the weather, you want to go just, oh, I don't like having being wet. You want to be go a little bit further into like, I'm trying to drive and everything to the supermarket. And I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna wipe out. It's actually really hard to like because there's too much rain. It's really hard to again going back to the clothing thing. That I've talked about. Well, I've actually talked about this in other classes, but the clothing matters to people. What they have to wear every day. Think about like one of the most important decisions you have to make every day is what you put on in the morning. Is it shorts or pants? Maybe I got something I have a cut down on my leg. I don't want people to see or something like that. Okay. Um, so and then if it's like hot outside, you usually have to do things like if it gets too hot out, you might have to like take off a coat or a sweat jacket or something like that. Okay. To reader, feature stories seem to have a more relaxed style in writing than a news story. It may be easier to read a news story. Feature writers, however, just work just as hard and just as disciplined. I mean, you see a lot of these like feature stories kind of go into the areas of like writing about concerts and things like that, art stuff. That's where like you'll have more of those kind of personal anecdotes that people will have. And again, a lot of this I've talked about already, the parts of a feature story. Um, the snapper, the engine, that's a paragraph. That's the nut graph I was telling you about already. They give a comparison between like essentially like what we would be doing with a typical news story and now the feature story. So here's a typical news story where you have like a traditional news lead, and then you have the body of the story where you give additional details about the lead. Blah, blah, again, and then well, there's really no ending, it just ends. But then what the feature story has, this anecdotal lead is also called a narrative lead. And when you do it, one way to think about this is that if you're really like kind of stuck in what all this means and everything, think about like the anecdotes that you put in the middle of the story typically, like we did in the 6% tuition hike story, reaction story. You just maybe take one of those anecdotes that you would put normally in the body of the story and put it at the top before the lead would go. Okay. Okay, you would take an anecdote and put it at the top, and then get into a nut graph that describes what all this is about. Okay. I mean, he provides some examples here of how one like actually works. Um, all right. I mean, like right here, this is actually a pretty short anecdotal lead, but again, the idea is that it's suspenseful. A lot of times these kind of stories are done as follow-up stories. A lot of times like you have like an incident happens like early in the day, like a terrible accident or something like that, or maybe even like a burglary or whatever, and you want to follow it up with like more details, more descriptive details, and a more engaging story. They call it a second right through. Okay, and that's more important nowadays, obviously, because the stories are fast. They come in like, very quickly now. So by the end of the day, you might be looking for something more as opposed to 30 years ago when it would be more, you have to wait like another day or two to see a follow up. You might follow it up later in the day and actually describe it in a more engaging way. Okay. So this is a story about, well, I can tell you right here, I'll just start by saying they carried knapsacks and bags to tote loot. They had a screwdriver to pry open doors and windows. They they used latex gloves. See the dramatic pause there? See, it's supposed to be written in a way that's actually more dramatic, suspenseful. They acted like professional criminals, but officials say they were teenage burglars coached and directed by a Palm Harbor woman whose son and daughter were part of their gang. That's your nut graph right there. Okay. So instead of having a story that basically just says like, um, several houses were burglarized last night in a ring of in a I don't know, a theft ring involving several people, blah blah blah. You actually get into like more of a descriptive detail of what happened and in a more engaging way, more surprising way, and then you want to like a little bit more want to then once you get into that theme, that unique theme, you get want to know a little bit more about who was it, how they did it, that sort of thing. And hopefully this is engaging enough of a top to leave you wanting and more interested in what's happening. Okay. All right. And then again, I have a more comparisons down here between a straight news lead and an anecdotal lead. Okay. Okay. So again, that's what's due in a week. So again, what do we have due again? So yeah, right, I have to think about it again. So on Monday, again, you have the, please get that information, ask that question to Bill. Yeah, so on this Monday, you have the Megalomania story. On Wednesday, you have the rewrite for the tuition reaction story. Please keep it to a reaction story about the tuition. Okay, it's not a couple people who actually just wrote a story about tuition. No, that's old news. That happened a year ago. Just basically write a reaction story to tuition. Okay. And then on let's see, then on Monday, a week from Monday, I should say, when this is posted, this a week from today, you'll have your feature story due, and you'll also have your um proposal for the major assignment that's due. Okay. Then a couple of days after that, you'll have I should say 3 days after that, on 27th, you'll have the rewrite to the Megalomania assignment due. Okay. And then on July 5th, and then you'll have a rewrite for the feature assignment as well. I just haven't posted that one yet. Okay. And then you'll have the final assignment, which is due on July 5th. Okay. So let me know if you need anything. And that's it. Thanks very much, and I'll be talking to you.